Sachin is very straightforward. He asks you the right questions. He is one of those persons who can change you fundamentally for good, in ways you could have never imagined. See, I grew up in Gurgaon, a very different Gurgaon than what it is now. Pretty much the growing there happened in a very typical PSU colony setup, and along with that, the very quintessential Bengali values of education, plus having a very utopian view of the world, as well as standing up for what you believe in. So I think, see, it was always the aspiration. It was never forced down, or it was never something that I didn't myself, I would say, choose for. I enjoyed science, I enjoyed physics. My mother was a physics teacher, so I always learned a lot through discovery, right? You ask a question, what is gravity, and you learn a lot more. You're not learning from a book, but it's coming a natural part of a conversation, right? Engineering was a choice which I made consciously. And then IIT was, I would say, I got lucky too. IIT certainly was very aspirational, and it was something which I would say, I would say my parents enabled every path. IIT Kanpur was very liberal. So as an example, I think we were one of the only IITs which allowed men or boys to enter the girls' hostel for the whole day except for 12 to 6, right? Which was it was very liberating for women, because you could have you were always working in multiple teams, right? And so where would you work, right? And even girls were allowed to go into the hostels for all the time. So that way I would say it was very it was interesting in its own and quirky in its own ways, but nothing worse beyond that. I think partly it was just a view after doing engineering that, hey, perhaps I should experience what management is, not so much finance. It was largely driven by that, rather than any other very concrete views. Finance definitely was something which only after joining IIM, and frankly at the time it was the thought around investment banking and going to Wall Street and etc. All that sort of was really the fascinating decisions behind joining finance. One thing for sure that large companies like Merrill and Credit Suisse, they do have a lot of structured ways of ensuring that these things are taken care of without you even noticing them. New York has the work ethics and I would say immense. It's very, very strong, right? The other thing I would say is that it's a very liberal city, so you learn to accept a lot of things. And I would finally say it's the timing, because I moved in 2008. That's when the great financial crisis happened. So yeah, it is truly humbling, and it also teaches you that whatever goes up can collapse even before it was. But at the same time, you'll be fine and you will grow again. India was certainly the place to build the next of your career, and the amount of chance to do things for the first time, right? The other thing was that I felt that I also, working from a very large organization, I wanted to experience how our smaller, younger organizations built, and that experience you would get in a place where you understand the culture and the other nuances as well, right? And you can also do it better. So a combination of these three things made it compelling to move back. From off the career experience of, there are a lot of things which an international experience gives you. But pure from a career point of view, how much you can do, what is the opportunity set, and how much you can grow and also make a personal impact, I think that is where the tables turn. But coming to why a smaller organization, what was really the kind of flavor of experience of seeing smaller companies, the challenges that they have in growth, and also the kind of visibility that you have to see what they are going through plus make an impact. It's very different than in a large company where your work is very much cookie cutter. I kind of had done the trade-off in my mind and knew that the brand was now less important than the learning I needed, and I knew the people, the pedigree, so that uncertainty was taken care of. Tech was something which I had a decent bird's eye view because of my investing. I was investing in smaller companies. I understood by then the chaos. I was on boards of these companies. So every day you would realize, maybe not in an executive capacity, but you knew that, what you expected 3 months later versus what is happening is totally different. So I had seen that. And actually that's what I wanted to be part of building that, rather than now just being an advisor or an investor, right? So to me, that was very clear that I wanted to make that switch. So I actually had this conversation right yesterday with my father. So there are these bank FDs which are lying in so many different banks, it's even hard to track. This is actually true, and you would lose only, let's say, X, which you can recover in like 6 months rather than 3.5 years. I would love it. I understood the sector pretty well. I'm a very strong believer that financial services is very deep. And it's perhaps one of the best sectors to work in from a career perspective. The other thing which was very compelling was that when I met Sachin, it was very clear his vision and his belief that financial services needs a more consumer-centric approach. We knew that we wanted to change financial services for today's consumer from within. I knew Ankit, who is his co-founder, he's the CFO. Ankit and I go back, studied together at IMA, and he had also made like a huge switch from being a career banker, working in a Bank of America, very large setup, right? And Ankit is one of the, I would say, people who is perhaps one of the most respected people in our batch. We had our 10-year reunion where Ankit and I met, and he just told me that, we're doing something interesting. Do you want to consider it? So when he had made that sort of a choice, and he knew Sachin as his IIT batchmate, right? So it just ticked all the boxes for me. So yeah, the conversation was super easy. Sachin is very straightforward. He asks you the right questions. He is one of those persons who can change you fundamentally for good in ways you could have never imagined. Saurabh, yeah, the way I met him, I interviewed him, and I usually remember the excellent interviews. It was that gut which just said that we should hire Saurabh. He's never let anyone down. So when he said that he would start up, and the other thing is that he had a lot of maturity, he has a lot of self-awareness, right? And that's something which is a standout about him. Personally, I have seen one is that this is an area which has not been solved well, right? There are a lot of distributors and so on, but retail really does not have exposure to the right kind of asset classes within fixed income, the right deals, let me put it. The idea is very, very compelling. I think the market opportunity is also right because I do see a lot of tailwinds. In fact, with the regulators, I've worked a lot with our regulators, and they have to be supportive of what you want to do. I think the additional piece of cake which is really missing everywhere is being transparent and in a way ensuring that what you are selling is the right thing for the investor, because that knowledge is limited to few in the industry, and something like a stable money, once it scales, you will have far more access to knowledge than someone who is a retail investor who will not understand that what is the difference between a AAA and a AA, right? For them, it's just one A away, right? So yeah, I think that transparency and bringing that sort of faith that you are doing absolutely what is right for the customer is what I really hope stable money would bring.